Your cat has a full bowl of food, a warm bed, a human who loves it, and zero natural predators anywhere nearby. And yet somewhere in your house right now, that same cat is probably stalking a bug or crouched behind furniture watching a bird through the window with genuine predatory focus. 10,000 years of living alongside humans, and cats never really got the memo that they're supposed to be domesticated. Compare that to a dog, bred over those same 10,000 years into shapes and temperaments almost unrecognizable from a wolf. Cats stayed cats, and the reason why is one of the strangest stories in the entire history of domestication. Let's start with a distinction most people never think about: taming versus domestication. Taming is something that happens to an individual animal in its own lifetime. Get a wild animal used to humans, and it can become tame, calm, comfortable. Domestication is something completely different. It's a genetic evolutionary process that happens to an entire species over many, many generations, permanently reshaping instincts, behavior, even physical appearance. Dogs are domesticated. A wolf raised by humans from birth is tame, maybe, but it is not domesticated. Its offspring will still be wolves through and through. The question with cats is whether they're actually domesticated at all in the way dogs are, or whether there's something stranger, a species that's been tame around humans for millennia, while remaining underneath it all, almost entirely wild. Here's where the archaeology gets fascinating. In 2004, archaeologists on the island of Cyprus uncovered a grave roughly 9,500 years old, containing a human skeleton buried deliberately alongside a cat skeleton, positioned close together, clearly an intentional joint burial. Cyprus has no native wildcat population, meaning humans had to have deliberately brought cats there by boat. That's remarkable evidence of an early genuine bond between humans and cats, thousands of years before Egyptian cat worship, thousands of years before anything we typically associate with domestication. And yet, here's the twist. This early relationship almost certainly wasn't humans selectively breeding cats for tameness, the way they were already doing with dogs. It was something closer to a mutual arrangement that neither species fully controlled. That arrangement starts with grain storage. As humans in the Fertile Crescent shifted to farming roughly 10,000 years ago, they started storing surplus grain, and grain attracts rodents in enormous numbers. Wild cats, the ancestors of every house cat alive today, followed the rodents straight into human settlements. Nobody captured them. Nobody bred them selectively for generations the way early humans did with wolves. The cats that were bold enough to tolerate proximity to humans got consistent access to an easy, abundant food source: mice and rats drawn to the grain. The cats that stayed timid and distant didn't get that advantage. Over time, the population of cats hanging around human settlements skewed toward individuals with slightly lower fear responses toward people. That's it. That's essentially the entire selection pressure. Not obedience, not trainability, not temperament for human companionship, just tolerance of proximity, driven by a food source humans never intended to share. Compare that to dogs, where humans were actively, intentionally, selecting breeding pairs for thousands of years, specifically favoring traits like trainability, loyalty, cooperative hunting ability, gentleness around children, an enormous, deliberate, ongoing genetic filtering process. Cats never went through anything close to that level of selective pressure, at least not until extremely recently in evolutionary terms. With a handful of modern show breeds, for the vast majority of the 10,000 years cats have lived near humans, they were essentially self-domesticating, if you can even call it that, following their own incentives, breeding largely with whichever other cats happened to be nearby, with humans as passive bystanders benefiting from natural pest control rather than active breeders shaping the species. This is where the genetics get genuinely striking. In 2007, geneticist Carlos Driscoll led a landmark study comparing the DNA of domestic cats worldwide against wild Felis libica populations across the Middle East and North Africa. The results confirmed that virtually all domestic cats descend from Oa, small number of wildcat populations in the Fertile Crescent region. But the more important finding was how genetically similar domestic cats remain to their wild ancestor, even today. The genetic distance between a modern house cat and a wild African wildcat is remarkably small, compared to the massive genetic gulf between a modern dog breed and a wolf. Structurally, behaviorally, your cat's genome is only a short step removed from an animal that has never lived anywhere near a human house in its life. And this genetic closeness shows up constantly in behavior, not as some rare exception, but as the default. Feral cats, domestic cats, that end up living without human contact, don't need generations to revert to fully wild behavior. It often takes only a single generation, sometimes even less, for kittens born to feral parents to grow up essentially indistinguishable in behavior from wild cats, fully capable hunters, wary of humans, self-sufficient. Try that with dogs. A population of abandoned dogs doesn't casually revert to wolf behavior in one generation. The domestication in dogs runs deep, embedded across thousands of genes shaped by deliberate selective breeding. In cats, that domestication was always comparatively shallow, more like a thin, flexible layer sitting on top of an almost entirely intact wild animal. This also explains something every cat owner has witnessed firsthand: the full predatory behavior set showing up completely intact in a house cat that's never once needed to hunt for survival. The stalking, the crouching, the tail twitch right before a pounce, the instinctive fascination with anything small and moving unpredictably. None of that had to be preserved on purpose. It was simply never selected against. Because unlike with dogs, where aggressive hunting behavior toward livestock or children was actively bred out, cats were valuable to humans specifically because they kept hunting. Getting rid of a cat's predatory drive would have gotten rid of the entire reason humans tolerated them in the first place. None of this means cats can't bond genuinely with humans. And this is the part that often gets misunderstood. Studies measuring oxytocin release, the same bonding hormone involved in human-to-human attachment, show real spikes during positive interactions between cats and their owners. Cats absolutely form attachments, seek out affection, recognize and prefer specific people, but that emotional bonding capacity, developed almost entirely independent of any deep behavioral or genetic reshaping toward dependency or obedience. A cat can love you and still be, underneath that affection, a nearly complete wild predator that happens to also enjoy your couch, your food, and your company on its own terms, largely unchanged from an animal roaming North African scrubland 10,000 years ago. So the next time your perfectly domestic, perfectly loved house cat drops a dead bug at your feet like a tiny hunting trophy, or spends 20 minutes stalking absolutely nothing across the living room floor, understand what you're actually looking at. Not a pet failing to act civilized, a species that never fully signed up for domestication in the first place, one that wandered into human settlements on its own terms, stayed for the free food, and simply never felt the evolutionary pressure to become anything other than exactly what it already was. If this changed how you think about your cat's wild side, hit subscribe, because this channel keeps uncovering the ancient instincts hiding behind the everyday things your cat does. And if you know someone whose cat still hunts bugs like its life depends on it, send them this video. Now they'll finally understand why.